Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we are doing part 161 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to compare to the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So we use them to talk about them and, our wonderful biodiversity. So let's have a look. We've got a couple exhibit animals, which is cool. Scott's come back with some more exhibit animals as well. So the next few parts, I don't like to cover them all in one part just because it makes too short of an episode. But it's nice to have a few to kind of, pad them out a bit well. And I like talking about them too because there's a lot of really cool little animals. Yeah, but we've also got today, we've got a bird, we've got another lemur, and we've got a few extinct animals today, which is pretty cool. So let's get stuck into our first animal. So this one is done by Scott. This is, let me exit out. This is the Goliath, Pinkfoot Goliath Bird Eater, done by Scott. So let's have a pick of one in there. So let's have a look at the camera. Let's see if we can find one that's sitting in a nice sunny spot there. Not you. It's got to be one sitting in a nice spot. So there we are, sitting in a nice sunny spot. Look at this cutie. So this is the Pinkfoot Goliath Bird Eater, or their scientific name is Thakia apophysics, which is pretty interesting. So these guys are another one of those really large tarantulas, so another type of Goliath bird eater. They're among one of the largest tarantulas in the world, with leg spans reaching up to 28 centimeters or about 11 inches. They have a dusty brown appearance, and you can see they've got that reddish hair going on. Let's see if maybe we can find one that's a little bit better in the light. Oh, this one might be a little bit better in the light. Sorry about that. You can see they've got reddish hair or setae in their legs and abdomen, but this species have a little bit more of a pinkish hue. I'm sure you guys can kind of notice that other species such as the Burgundy Goliath bird eater don't have. And they're very interesting, as a full-grown adult specimen, and how can you not love them? Love a good Goliath bird eater, a really wonderful animal. Anyway, the pink, as I mentioned, these guys are very similar to species like Theraphosa blondi or Smurti, which is the Burgundy, Burundi, however you say, Goliath bird eater. Very subtle differences between them. These guys have far more hair or setae on their legs in general, and they have a much more pinkish or reddish hue over their body. And slings show kind of the pink feet or tarsi, so these are tarsus, on the leg pairs, and their palps tend to be pink as well, or pinkish color. And mature males do actually have hooks or tribidal spurs. So the main way to tell them apart from other species is kind of that little bit more of a pinkish hue that they have. Probably something that you're not really going to notice unless you're familiar with your spiders, but that's alright. So in terms of disposition, these guys are generally calm, but like most tarantulas, when they are disturbed, they'll either flick their indicating bristles or even display a threat pose that will hiss, and they make these hisses by stridulating the bristles between the fangs. So very similar to these guys, this species are kind of considered the worst to come in contact with. So if they spray, or they shoot hairs at you, it can cause itching and burning, quite severe itching too. And so when people either work with a species either in captivity or in the wild, you got to be very careful, have eye protection, things like that, just so the hairs don't really get on you. And don't annoy the spider too much, of course. So you got to be very careful, especially into your soft tissue and eyes. And in terms of kept in captivity, they don't really make great display tarantulas because they like hanging out in their burrows. And their venom is expected to be mild, though it could be likened, because they've got so large fangs, it could be like getting stabbed with a fork. And the injury itself would be quite painful regardless of any venom. But they are known as skittish, and they won't be aggressive without cause. So that's another good thing about them, is that they aren't there to just be big meanies. They do it only to defend themselves. But they're a really, really cool species. How can you not love a good bird eater? Go back. Very interesting animal. Alright. So that was the one done by Scott. Next up, we've got another mod by Leaf. Another walkthrough exhibit animal. We've got a flying fox. So this is the Ruru Flying Fox. Let's see if we can pick one that's flying around. Camera. So let's have a look at you. Look at this little cutie. So you can find one that's flying around. Yeah, a little bit more interesting colours to them. Might see if you could get... Yeah, you look a little bit better. No, it's kind of hard to get a good look at when you're flying around. Just something in the good light. These are really cool animals. So the Ruru Flying Fox, or fruit bat, or Pteropus dasmalis. These guys are a species of megabat in the family Pterodoptidae, so related to other flying foxes and fruit bats. They are found in Japan, Taiwan, in the Baltis and Belladon Islands of the Philippines, and their natural habitat is typically tropical dry forests and subtropical or tropical swamps. And they are threatened by habitat loss or by hunting for food, and the IUCN classifies them as vulnerable, as we get into. So yeah, in terms of their taxonomy, they're described as a new species in 1825 by Dutch zoologist Conrad Jacob Timrich, and found these species in user description, and the name, kind of specific name, Delamus, comes from the ancient Greek Daris or hairy or woolly, so it's like the hairy woolly, animal with this kind of names. And there are 5 different subspecies described, kind of found all around the islands, like Taiwanese and some of them as well, and they're based on populations that occur at different islands. Though I'm not sure how realistic those subspecies are, mainly just because if they're found on all sorts of islands, they can disperse pretty well, but there is obviously a big gap, so they probably didn't quite disperse like that. So you can see them kind of flying around there. I don't like that they... I'm trying to get a good look at them, but it's kind of hard because they're either curled up or, flying around. These guys don't quite have that enrichment here, but yeah, we'll have a look at a few of you guys there. So in terms of description, it is slightly smaller than the Indian flying fox, with a wingspan of about 1.2 to 1.4 meters, or about 4'1" to 4'8", and they weigh between 400 to 500 grams, or between 0.88 and 1.10 pounds, so 1.10 pounds. Its forearm is approximately 140 millimeters, or about 5.5 inches long, and the body of the bat is covered in long hairs, which makes his body seem woolly, so it's, as I mentioned, kind of like the woolly bat. And the bat itself is reddish-brown with kind of a yellowish nape, as you kind of see there. You can kind of see that there too. Oh yeah, I need to fix that, which is quite interesting. And the ears, you can also see, are quite small and pointed, and it's actually sometimes difficult to see beneath the thick fur. And its flight membranes, you can see the wings are kind of a dark brown in colour. So in terms of their ecology and biology, they are mostly frugivores, so they mostly feed on fruits, and they consume the fruit of at least 53 plant species, and the flowers of 20 plant species, the leaves of 18 plant species, and the bark of 1 plant species. So they do have a few species that they do like to feed on. They've also been observed consuming 8 different species of insect, and one of their favourite types of trees to hang around is the Chinese banyan, which is an important source of food year-round, and they're also an important pollinator of species such as Shima Wallacei, which is an evergreen tree, so they're quite important pollinators. And they also pollinate a species of climbing vine, Mucosa macrocarpa, and it is also a nocturnal species, so they typically come out at night, using solitary roosting during the day and foraging at night. And these guys also, like other species of bats and some animals, they are really important seed dispersers, as the seeds from digested fruits are kind of disposed for in the guano, and can be up to about 1,833 kilometers, or about 1.13 miles. So basically 1,000, up to 2 kilometers away, just under 2 kilometers away from their parent tree. So they're quite good at dispersing plants, which helps speed up the ecosystem, and that's why bats are quite important, especially fruit bats. In terms of their distribution habitat, they're native to Taiwan, Japan, and the Philippines. And in Japan, they are found in the Oshumu Islands, Tokara Islands, Okinawa Islands, Mikara Islands, Yaeyama Islands, and the Dantu Islands. And in the Philippines, they're present on Bataan, Dapuli, and Fuga. And their habitat typically is forests where they can roost in the day during the trees, either in small groups or by themselves. And in terms of their status, the largest population of these bats is thought to be in the Philippines and thought to be stable. And in Japan, they're estimated to be well over 5,000, but in Taiwan, there's been a large reduction in bat numbers. The species face, sadly, a number of threats, And some populations are hunted for consumption, so people eat these bats, but also considered a delicacy in the Baiyuan Kalau. And in Japan, habitat loss is their main threat, as some individuals get entangled in nets to protect citrus crops, and others are electrocuted by power lines. Though overall, the most endangered populations, most populations have been in decline, and this is seen to level off to some extent as they remove this bat from endangered. So they're doing a little bit better than they were, but they are still considered vulnerable just because of all these threats. So they are considered, used to be considered endangered, but now they are considered vulnerable. Relationships to humans. They are devastating to orchards, so a lot of people that are, growing fruits don't really want them around. Its depredation of orchards caused the Okinawa preference to actually launch an investigation, and in 2 villages, estimated that flying fox cost about 19 million yen, or $175,000, in damages in citrus crops annually. And a lot of, sadly, farmers think that these guys are pests and should be managed by culling, which is a little bit tragic since they are not considered doing that well. They are vulnerable. But yeah, very, very cool species, and it's a good look to get at their nape there. Really, really cool animal. Nice to see another animal getting a little bit of love. Though sadly, as I mentioned, those species, species like these sometimes are considered a pest, even though they're doing completely, just doing their thing. And it doesn't pick agriculture. Anyway, next up we've got a mod by GreatCakeMods, another great one. We've got one of their birds this time. So, and it happens again. Okay, we're going to have a look at the Silvery-Cheeked. Why does it keep doing that? That's better. So this is the Silvery-Cheeked Hornbill. Very interesting animal. So, Borealis brevis, or brevis, is a large species of hornbill that is found in Africa, and they are resident of tall evergreen forests in East Africa, from Ethiopia to South Africa, and in Zimbabwe they are considered threatened by habitat destruction, and their presence in South Africa is marginal, but they remain locally fairly common, especially in the northern and central parts of that area. In terms of their description, they measure between 75 to 80 centimeters, or about 30-31 inches in length, and have a very large cream-colored casque, as you can see, kind of like that little horn there. That's what's considered their casque on their beak. And their hair the head is silvery grey, and the rest of their plumage is kind of an iridescent black, except for their white rump, lower back and thighs. They've also got some white on their tail feathers, and they've also got, like this, as you can see, their kind of spot there. That's what's considered their rump. So that's why they're considered, that whiteness, white bit. The sexes are pretty similar to each other as well, except the females typically have smaller casques and a reddish skin between their eyes. Let's see if we can find out which one we have here. So this is a male. Yep. Let's see if we can find a female. That's a juvenile. So that's a female. Oh, no. That's not what we wanted. So this is a female. You can see a little bit of a smaller casque. Not too much of a difference. But here we'll have a look at the diet. So these guys are considered omnivores. So they pretty much feed on whatever. They feed on insects, fruits, small birds, rodents, small reptiles, and centipedes. So pretty much anything smaller than them. And in terms of behavior, they usually live in pairs or sometimes roost in flocks of up to hundreds of individuals. We'll have a look at the little babies and talk about breeding. So typical breeding season for these guys is typically in spring, September to October, at least in some parts of their range. It probably fluctuates because they have such a wide range. And they lay clutches of between 1 to 3 white eggs, which are incubated for about 40 days, and then the young remain with both parents until about 80 days when they fledge, go off and do their thing. And luckily they are considered least concerned, so they are considered doing okay. But yeah, just a really, really cool animal. But you can see that difference to the males. You can see they've got that really, really large, this is a baby, and you can see the adults got that really, really large casque. But yeah, really, really cool. Alright, so that is by GreatCakeMods. We got the Silvery-Cheeked Hornbill. Next up, we've got a mod done by Leaf and Nicholas Reinrider, the dream team back at it. So we have got another Saaka this time. We have got the Ventrix Saaka. So this is the Ventrix Saaka, Propithecus viroxi, or the white Saaka. So these guys are a medium-sized primate from one of the lemur families, the Androcidae. So like other lemurs, they live in Madagascar and can be found in a variety of habitats, from rainforests to dry deciduous forests on western Madagascar and spiky thickets of the south. You can see their fur is also quite thick and silky and generally white with brown sides. About at the top of the head and arms, and like all shifakas, they use their long tail to balance while leaping from tree to tree, and they're actually so highly adapted, like other shifakas, to climbing around and being arboreal on the ground. They can only walk around by hopping, and the species lives in small troops which forage for food. So in terms of their anatomy, once they reach adulthood, that is an adult, so let's have a look. So it's actually not how they'd walk in life. They need custom, animations for that. In adulthood, the full head to body length is between 42.5 to 45 centimeters, about 16.7 to 17.7 inches, and the tail of a full-grown Saaka, Ventrix Saaka, can go between 56 and 60 centimeters, or about 20 to 24 inches. In terms of weight, adult females reach about 3.4 kilograms, or about 7.5 pounds, while males reach about 3.6, or about 7.9 pounds. So females are slightly larger. They also have a relatively low, flat brain case, and their face is much broader than most other injuries, but their snout is reduced. This species of Shifaka is also kind of distinguished from its dentition, which is different from other species, so it's a way to tell them apart. And they display that typical stepchirine characteristic of the tooth cone, so that's wet monkeys or with wet noses, so things like lemurs is a great example. Also tarsiers and lorises and things like that. Formed by the recumbent teeth, the actually tooth cone will come the front margin of the mouth, and they have high shearing molars that suggest that they're a folivore, so they feed on leaves, fruits, and flowers. And postcranially, they have a low intervertebral index that rates from 63 to 66. They also have a much broader rib cage than most other prosimians, and they have many lumbar vertebrae, leading them to be a little bit more flexible, which is quite interesting. Their pelvis is also quite high and narrow, and the actobellum is relatively shallow. That allows those kind of greater flexibility. And like other injury species, they have a short, calcareous pointed nails and slightly webbed hands and feet. It's a little bit ways to tell them apart. In terms of diet, these guys will forage for food with a troop, primarily in the morning and late afternoon, so they can rest during the hottest parts of the day. They are herbivores, so eat leaves, fruit, barks, and flowers as a typical part of their diet. However, they're mostly folivores, which leaves representing the majority of their diet through the year. And they seem to choose food items based on quality or lower tannin contents rather than availability. So they like things that are a little bit better quality. They prefer quality over quantity. So in terms of behavior, they are diurnal and arboreal. So they spend their time in the trees during the day and engage in sunbathing with outstretched arms and legs. They can move through the trees by clinging and leaping between vertical surfaces. They're actually capable of making remarkable leaps through the trees, with distances of leaps being about 9 to 10 meters that are not uncommon. And on the ground, like other shifakas, they actually hop bipedally. If you've seen videos of them hopping on the ground, if you've ever seen the movie Dinosaurs, a great example. They're a type of shifaka, and they kind of have to hop around funny on the ground. That's a great example of maybe something that's a little bit more pop culture-y that you might have seen them, unless you've watched documentaries about these guys. Seems like they haven't, because we don't have shifakas in the game. They don't have the custom animations yet to show them off. But anyway, they live in family groups of troops between 2 to 12, which may consist of one male and female, or many males or females together. Group and population ratio seems to be more or less skewed towards males, and many groups seem to effectively be harem groups with a single dominant male and unrelated to resident females. And they typically have a range between 2.8 to 5 hectares, and although they can be territorial, they defend food sources rather than territorial borders, and often these borders will overlap. And females are dominant over males, which form a matriarchal society like other types of lemurs. Females use anogenital secretions to mark their territory, while males use specialized secretions both through the throat and anogenital to kind of advertise themselves, to mates rather than for territory. They also show bimorphism, so they often will have a clean or stained chest, depending on the derived from throat gland secretions and smeared on surfaces. And stained-chest males tend to engage in the most active marking, while chest staining seems to be related to testosterone levels. So if you've got high testosterone, you'll have a lot more of a stained chest. Males and females are typically found to engage in a biological market, so they will often exchange grooming for grooming during the non-mating period, and grooming offered by males for reproductive opportunities, so often access to females or offered by females during the mating period. So they kind of groom to kind of like get, to something. So they kind of like a little bit of a barter system. The study found that females copulate more with stained-chested males than clean-chested males, which could be a sign of testosterone. However, clean-chested males with a lower scent resulting usually are more often more grooming of the female. So this grooming for for copulation tactics allows males with a clean chest to get copulate, even if it's a low rate. So basically, they have to work for it. The ones with the stained chest are the bad boys; they get the girls, and the ones that are quote unquote, clean chest are the nice guys. I like to use quote unquote because it's not actually how it works, but that's like the easiest way to explain it, I think. In a funny way too. It's just quite funny. Yeah, it's interesting to think about how these things work within primate societies. They also, as well, they've been discovered that dyads, or groups of two, often engage in post-conflict reunions after aggressive episodes, which occurs when food is not involved or low intensity. The species actually play behavior into adulthood, so they'll even play even with stranger males as an ice-breaking mechanism. So they often play with each other just to break the ice, pretty much. And a study into Shifaka vocalizations found that roaring barks are associated with anti-predator response, or anti-raptor responses, of which the Ventrix Saaka looked up and climbed down. On the other hand, the meaning of the Tishfak vocalizations growls varied by population, whether the population subject to significant terrestrial predation associated these vocalizations with anti-terrestrial responses, where they looked down and climbed up, when other populations associated with a non-specific response and they kind of growled in the middle distance. Yeah, let's look at these guys. So we're going to have a look now at the baby. We'll see if we can find a baby. There we are, there's a juvenile. He's thirsty. You should probably go get a drink. Unless he's stopped. Has he stopped moving? We'll move him over closer, why not? So here's our little guy. So this is the juvenile. So in terms of reproduction, about 45% of females will breed each year when they become an estrus. That's between late January to early February. And females typically give birth to one infant after a gestation period of 130 days, typically between June and August. And for the first 6 to 8 weeks of their life, the infant will cling to its mother's stomach, but then from the following 19 weeks, it clings to her back. And about 30% of infants are lost to predation by animals such as fossa or the fossa, in smaller number to raptors like the Madagascar harrier hawk. And those that do survive will typically reach sexual maturity between 3 to 5 years. Males will generally leave the group that they were born in to join a natoring group, where adult females tend to stay in their natal group. So the males will go off and do their thing, typically, while the females will stay in their natal group. And in terms of their ecology and conservation status, they are sadly considered critically endangered, as we'll get into. So they listed as CITES Appendix 1, and they was updated to actually critically endangered in 2020. So in the small spiny forest fragments of South Madagascar, their abundance seemed to be influenced by population proportion of large trees and the abundance of the plant species Aloata prochea, which is a key species in these forests habitats. A long-term, large-scale demographic study of the species at Benza Mafale Special Reserve in southwestern Madagascar suggests that they have a population there that's a growth rate of 0.98, with a confidence which means they're not in danger of immediate extinction. However, both severe droughts and increased annual variation in rainfall could lead to depress these growths. And they are considered critically endangered because of Madagascar being Madagascar, with a lot of poaching and habitat destruction. So that's something that really impacts these guys. So luckily, where they are kind of doing okay, they are doing, where those places are protected, they are doing okay. But there is still a great risk, just because being in Madagascar at the moment has been so politically charged, and all the legal trade and hunting and bushmeat that goes on there. But yeah, really, really cool species. Definitely like talking about these guys. And great one, Lee for Nicholas Ryder, always, dream team. Did a great job with this one. Hopefully we get some custom animations so we can see them doing the hopping. That would be quite fun. Okay, but next up, we've got another Great Cakes mod. We've got a few extinct animals now. We're into the extinct animals. So this is a really cool little guy. That's a juvenile. We'll have a look at the adults. So this is Thoatherium Minusculum, which means active, swift beast in Latin. These guys are an extinct genus of Leptoteran mammal from the early Miocene of Argentina, so between 17 to 16 million years ago. So first I'll explain what a Leptotera is, because you guys will probably kind of know what they are once I mention their most famous example. But they're a group, a family within the South American native ungulates. So South America throughout most of pretty much until about 5 million years ago, from most of the Cenozoic, was considered isolated. So it was a giant island, a continent, kind of like Australia is now. So a lot of different animals hanged around there and kind of became, their own thing. And these guys, their closest living relatives, because sadly all of these South American ungulates are now extinct. The last one went extinct during the end of the Ice Age. So they had a really long history and even the Holocene. So they just missed living into the modern day. So the most famous example of the Leptotherians is Macrauchenia, from Walking with Beasts and, Ice Age, the movies, the one with the trunk. That is, even though it probably didn't have a trunk in life, the Macrauchenia is probably the most famous example. But there are all sorts of different South American ungulates that mimicked and looked a lot like ungulates from around the world. There's like Toxodon, that's very much like a rhino. Others that looked like gazelles and llamas, like Macrauchenia kind of looked like a llama. And this is a very interesting one. This is a little one that looks like a little gazelle. And even has like a little bit like a horse, and it looks a lot like a horse superficially, but it's a great example of convergent evolution, as we'll get into. So fossils of this genus has been found in the Santa Cruz Formation in Argentina, and they typically have a length of about 70 centimeters, so they're very, very small, or about 2.3 feet long. These guys are a small representative of the group Leptotera, and judging from its long legs, it was quite a fast runner. It also had remarkably reduced toes and only one horse-like hoof remains. So they're not related to horses very closely. They're actually more closely related to things potentially like Toxodon than they are to modern horses. But this is a great example of convergent evolution. They even lack the splint bones, which are the remnants of the second and fourth toes, which are actually found in modern horses. So they likely evolved that one toe in a different way. So that's a great example of convergence. They didn't do it the same way, but they did it for the same reason. And judging from its teeth, it's got brachiodont teeth. They typically fed on soft leaves rather than tough grasses, so these guys are much more browsers. So Leptotera, as I mentioned, they're extinct order of the native ungulates of South America. They lived from the Paleogene into the Holocene. And they're the second most diverse group of South American ungulates, and they include Macrauchenia. That's kind of the most famous example. But there's all sorts of really cool prehistoric South American native ungulates that don't really get talked about. Really the only famous examples you get are like Toxodon and Macrauchenia. But there's so many interesting South American native ungulates that we don't get to talk about. And it's great that Great Cakes mod gave us this cute little Thoatherium. Really, really cool. And these guys definitely deserve to be talked about. So really, really cool. Have a look at their Zoopedia and see what else information we can get. Yeah, active swift beasts. Only one horse here. The hind gut fermenters. Macrauchenia seem to be, and the closest living relative being Prosodactyla. So that includes things like equids, rhinos, and tapirs, as I mentioned, and Prosodactyla. So they would be the closest living relatives of most of these South American ungulates. And we'll have a look at this little design. I think it looks really, really awesome. Nice to see these guys. And we'll have a look at the baby, because the babies we know are very, very cute. Ooh, and that's not what we wanted. We'll have a look at the juvenile. That's an adult. This is a little juvenile. And this is another great example of a Great Cakes mod. So look how cute that is. Little cutie. Little cutie. How cute. So obviously based off the Prozorski's horse and, very superficially kind of horse-like. But they're not that closely related to horses at all. But yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a cool, nice little mod. Love to see some representation of some extinct animals that you get much love often, and a really nice reconstruction too. like animals, because it's often these animals don't get nice reconstructions, so it's nice to see getting them a nice one here. Yeah, quite cool. So now we're going to be moving on to another one done by GreatCakeMods. We're going to be moving to Africa. We have got some very interesting animals. We've got Simba bakwa. So let's have a look. It's Simba bakwa. There's the parents here. So this is the male, so quite a big guy. So this is Simba bakwa, which means great lion in Swahili. There's an extinct genus of hyenodonts that in the family Hydrolidae, which lived in Kenya in the early Miocene, so about 23 to 22 million years ago. So the fossils of these guys were found in rural Kenyans in Masawa Bridge in Western Kenya, and thereafter Matthew Borens and Nancy Stevens published the findings after examining the fossils in the Nairobi National Museum that's been in Kenya for decades. The type specimen consists of a mandible of the lower jaw, the right upper maxilla, and some postcranial remains. The light wear dentitions on the indicate the holotype was actually a young adult, so it may not have been quite fully grown, but it may have just been a young adult when it died. The name of the genus comes from Swahili language of meaning great lion, and the full scientific name is Simba kuba kuto Africa, which is the great lion of Africa. So that's kind of its full name. So quite interesting as well. Different models. There's been all sorts of way of trying to estimate the size of this animal. And with low estimates being about 280 kilograms, based on equation derived from M3 lengths, or the third molar of Venus carnivorans, so it's comparable to the largest lions, with some large estimates actually making it much bigger. Upper estimates about 1.3 to 1.5, 1,308 to 1,504 kilograms, so up to about 2 or 1.5 tons. Or about 2,884 to 3,426 pounds, based on the equations based on the kind of carnassial length, or the big molar tooth that they use for cutting flesh, hyenodonts and felids respectively, which actually would surpass the modern polar bear in size. So there's quite a vary bit in estimates. However, hyalinoids typically possess proportionally very large heads in comparison to their body, and postcrania remains indicate that similar-sized Hyalururus was the size of a tiger, whether the larger Thoatherium, which is a relative of this guy, would have been estimated to be maximum weight of 500 kilograms, or just over 1,100 pounds. Though the study estimated the body mass was low estimate of between 317 kilograms to 699 pounds, with a high estimate of 1,794 to 3,002 kilograms, so between 3,955 or 6,618 pounds, using the same methods. So really kind of don't know, but it would have been up there. It would have been pretty big. And the study into the postcranial remains indicates that actually this guy was a semi-digigrade walk-in stance. So it had been kind of halfway between a bear, which is plantigrade, and a wolf or a cat, which is digigrade, so they walk on their digits. So they would have kind of been in between, which makes sense considering its ecology. And in terms of paleoecology, like other species of hyenodonts, they probably were specialist hunters and scavengers, and preyed on rhinos and early proboscideans. They may have been somewhat less specialized in crushing bones than its later relatives, such as Hyalururus, though however, like Hyalururus, they would have had rotating carnassial blades, which would have been able to kind of constantly sharp them, so they would have stayed constantly sharp throughout their lives. So it's quite interesting, a lot of these hyenocats. And very interesting about hyenodonts in general, there is talk about them being potentially paraphyletic. So they kind of range all across the world. And hyenodonts, like North America, they're pan-carnivora, so they would be, some would have been like that, but others could have been potentially Afrotheres and things like that. So, and Hyenotherium or Hyenodontidae is considered a waste bucket. So just anything that looks like a weird kind of carnivorous mammal kind of goes in there. Yeah, very interesting to something to look into. But a really cool animal that we get to bring up, because I love talking about these guys. So yeah, that is, this is, yeah, as I mentioned, Simba bakwa. Yeah, really, really cool. So this is one of the skins it comes with. It also comes with Then have a dark skin. You can see I'm pretty sure that's mum. You can have a look at them. We'll have a look at the babies as well, because that's probably another good one to look at. So you can see the cute little baby. And then you can compare it while it's standing up. So these are two young. How cute are they? I really love this reconstruction too. I think it fits quite well, and it shows like that kind of almost hyenodon kind of look it's got to it. And you can see why they're kind of called hyenodon. Their teeth are more similar to hyenas, you know, they've got kind of a hyena look to them. Very, very interesting with the big heads. Alright, so now we're going to move on to our last animal. We've got another one done by Leaf and Nicholas Lion Rider. We've got a proboscidean this time. So let's have a look. Is this the male? Yep, we'll have a look at the male first. So this is Belladon. So this is a species of embelladont proboscidean that comes from the Miocene of Africa, Eurasia, and North America. So between the Miocene between 12 to 5 million years ago. So right up until the end of the Pliocene. The beginning of the Pliocene, I mean. So these guys were originally considered a subgenus of Embelladon, which is another closely related animal that looks like this. But they were fully kind of given the full generic rank as of 2014 reappraisal of Mastodon and Anticurus. And within Elabontidae, these guys are closely related to a more famous example, Platybelladon, which is the one with like the really long bottom jaw and the weird front bottom tusks, and Toribelladon. So it's believed that this genus kind of originated within the eastern Eurasia, with key robustus being known from the Linshu Formation in Gansu Province in China. And under this hypothesis, they diverged with the separate migrations westward into Europe and Western Asia, represented by key Atticus, and then eastward into North America, where the genus arrived about 7 million years ago and survived until the very end of the Miocene. And the species Conobelladon sirenensis is also known from the late Miocene of North Africa, which actually represents the last surviving embelladont in the African continent. So that's quite interesting. I don't know what species this is meant to be. We'll have a look. Zoopedia. This is Spur. So Spur, when it isn't given a species, it's just Spur. You can see how long they actually kind of lived around there. And you can see the size there. As I mentioned, also called shovel tuskers. They had a wide distribution, and they could have been using the bark from trees, you know, similar to Platybelladon. There's been studies on that. And they, as I mentioned, once considered. And they seem to like all sorts of different habitats. Yeah, we're not quite finished yet. So in terms of their description, as shovel tuskers, as I mentioned, like Platybelladon, Conobelladon would have had 2 pairs of tusks, one growing from the upper jaw, like normal, like modern elephants. You know, the 2 growing out there. But they also had 2 growing from the lower, second from the lower ones, from the lower jaw. Okay, Robustus was estimated to have a body mass of between 2,802 to 7,367 kilograms, or between pretty much just under 3 to just a little over 7 tons. So not as big as your modern elephants, but still quite large. But though it was generally larger than most gomphotheres on account for its thicker limbs. So it is larger than most gomphotheres and belladonts, so it is a little bit larger than a lot of them. A lot of them were a little bit smaller than modern elephants and had a little bit of a different niche, a little bit more similar to modern bovids. Its standing posture was actually not like those that are very column-like from modern elephants and mammoths, or the American gomphotheres, which is quite interesting. They had a little bit more like a little bit bent, and they just were a little bit different. And their lower tusks were quite proportionally large and reaching about 1.6 meters, or about 5'3" in length. So we're quite big. And in terms of ecology, Conobelladon was considered to be a browser based on dental microwear. So they're able to look at all the scrapes that their food kind of put on their teeth to be able to see what they were eating. And it seems these guys were much likely browsers. And the upper tusks were likely used for slicing and scraping, while the lower tusks may have been used for digging. So very much like that. We'll have a look at this cute little animation. So very likely they would have been using those tusks to help scrape plants and bark and branches of leaves and things like that. So a lot more well adapted for browsing than modern elephants, which are a little bit more generalized. So these guys would have been a lot more well adapted browsers, which is quite interesting. But yeah, that's these guys finished. We've got plenty of extinct species today, and also a little bit of a short episode. Doesn't bother me. Let's have a look at these cute little babies. Look around. How cute are they? I love seeing the babies. I love these little guys. Baby elephants are just so cute in general, and then you make them look a little bit funky, you know, with the extra tusks and things. Really, really awesome mod to show off these guys. So, yeah, this is a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified below anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.